Hello everyone, thank you for watching and listening. I'm jumping online quickly, I hope. I'm not planning to do a long talk, but I wanted to speak a little bit about why I actually work with the chakras. So you might have seen me in the newsletters or in the group or in some videos go on about the chakras a little bit at the moment. And that is because I have an advanced Thai massage course coming up in October here in Portugal, where we are using the framework of the chakras. The course is called The Subtle Touch, Releasing Energy Patterns. And so, yeah, I thought it might be quite useful to even say, like, what are they? Why orient by the chakras? Especially as maybe you normally hear me talk a lot more about anatomy and the nervous system. I talk about a lot, and a lot about trauma awareness and conditioning in our bodies and the stories in our bodies, and that kind of stuff, and chronic pain. And so that's been a lot of my kind of recent sharings. And so why suddenly am I using the framework of the chakras? Well, I mean, it is still an Eastern practice, and I strongly believe in the Eastern philosophy of, well, kind of trying to explain what we are, who we are in life, and how everything is interrelated. I think it does a much better job than any other Western explanation in my mind, because we're also looking at the whole. That's kind of like the starting point. But specifically to the chakras. So, well, maybe going back to my kind of normal talk, we are made up of very complex patterns of fascia, of different structures, but also kind of behavioral patterns and holding patterns, habitual patterns, responsive patterns, all these things that work in a constant interchange and creating the flow that we the way that we navigate through life. And the chakras are basically they're like a map to explain some of this. And you can use any map. There's many maps, and they actually don't even contradict themselves. They just use a different language. There are many maps to describe this. The chakras are an Eastern view map of how all of this works and comes together. And they are in constant flow. They're in constant interrelation and constant interchange and constant communication. They're adaptable and they develop. But what I find really interesting is when you really dive into the chakras is also how we can then actually relate that back to our Western understanding of psychology, of trauma, of developmental issues, of social engagement, social issues, cultural, behavioral issues, inherited patterns and traumas, and so on. So when you dive in, it gives for me, kind of like a really nice framework and structure, really like a map to navigate all of that very complicated and complex landscape. So each chakra, and well, there's actually different maps of that, but I'm working with the 7 main chakras. There's many more, but the 7 main chakras, they're we align them along the central axis of our body. They have different qualities and different elements and different characteristics, different issues that they speak to. And they speak to things like our sense of belonging and safety, our kind of real physical existence in this world, to the way that we flow and move through the world, to how we're able to act and express and be in motion and manifest and create in this world, how we relate to the world around us, to the people with compassion and kindness, or maybe not, how we express ourselves creatively in this world and communicate with the world, how we see and perceive the world around us, our inner wisdoms, our intuition, our insights, our innate intelligence, as well as our higher consciousness and connectedness with one another and with nature and Mother Earth and all living beings and all life. And, all of these things together, and this is really just touching very, very high level, are this kind of complex, they're all parts and facets and aspects of our very complex being. And the chakras are a really tangible, in a way quite simple framework to understand some of that and how all of that plays together, how these qualities and issues and facets are developed from birth or pre-birth, throughout adolescence, all the way through age. What issues in that upbringing might impact the balance of some of those aspects in our being. And so it relates to trauma and to behavioral patterns and habitual patterns as well. And it also helps us explain maybe some of the symptoms that manifest in our beings, health issues or postural things, behavioral patterns, tendencies. And when we have a framework that we can navigate by, then it's a really helpful tool in a way to maybe understand and process some of the information that we perceive through the touch and the connection and that kind of being present with somebody in the treatment. And so those of you who obviously already do Thai massage might have experienced that, like you're picking up on certain things that seems like some kind of random information, or you notice things, you observe things, and sometimes you can't quite put your finger on it, or you can't quite figure out what that information kind of really meant. And so the chakras in a way offer like a framework and a resonance for that information to fall into. And so maybe it might help you then to navigate that information and to see where that might then take you in your treatment. Or it might even become apparent, of course, in your conversation that you have with your client before the treatment. And they might report certain issues or certain stories, and you could relate that back to this framework and see whether maybe you use the chakras as a way to create a treatment. And that is just one option to approach your treatment, of course. And it could be that you speak more the language of anatomy and then you orient around that, or that you speak more the language of the 5 elements or the traditional Chinese medicine, and you might orient that way. And the chakras are, again, just another layer of framework that might help to navigate and to approach your treatment and maybe restore some of that balance, which is ultimately still our overall intention to restore or create as best as possible, and a relative balance in body, mind, and soul. And as all Eastern practices, and Thai massage as well, obviously use also the framework of energy, it makes sense to dive deeper into that framework, and the chakras sit within that space. It's an energy framework. And so there are different ways of then working with that and focusing on maybe one or two or any particular chakras in a treatment. And something to bear in mind that actually you already have a lot of vocabulary available to you right from level 1, because it's not only about having lots of techniques around each individual chakra, which is, yes, what we are going to do in the training, but it's also about understanding the qualities and the nature and the element of each chakra and how we might be able to stimulate those. So it could be that if you wanted to focus on the first chakra, Muladhara, the root chakra, base chakra, the element is earth. It's all about grounding. It's about bringing somebody right back down. And we've spoken about that right from the very start. How can I maybe create a more grounding sequence? And so then you would just add another color to that by being aware that you're also speaking to that quality of the base chakra and maybe bringing some balance into that. And then obviously if you're aware of what the issues and qualities or potentially some of the imbalances of that are, then it becomes more specific, obviously, and more therapeutic in your application. Or it could be, that you are focusing more on the third chakra that sits around the diaphragm. So you would really want to create quite a bit of movement around this kind of whole upper body and work on the diaphragm, on the ribs, and do some twists and some side bends and get the spine to move. And you might want to really go right in on the diaphragm, but that's also the element of fire. So you might want to create a slightly more energetic treatment and bring a little bit more of a fire touch, more structural work, more muscle work overall into the treatment. So you see how there's many different ways of how we can speak to the different chakras, and that's why I didn't call this like Thai massage by chakras or something course. That's why I called this course The Subtle Touch, because there are so many subtleties in the way that we connect in our touch through the quality of touch. So that's really, as much as I want to offer lots of kind of new techniques and some fun stuff for each one of the 7 chakras, my main focus really is on kind of diving in on discovering all these different qualities of touch, these different nuances, the different focus, the different kind of, there is so much more potency in our touch than we might actually be aware of. Going from the lightest butterfly touch that actually goes the deepest and we speak to directly the organs, to more fiery touch and really freeing up the structure of the body. And yeah, I'll be introducing a couple of other techniques there that are really like refining the touch there. So I don't know if I was explaining that all that well. I came on quite spontaneously. I had a conversation with somebody and about this. Well, why are you not calling this course the chakra course, or I wasn't aware, and so I thought maybe I should speak to this a little bit as to, well, why am I using the chakras? So yeah, I find them, they are fascinating because they offer so much insight to how things are interrelated as well, because they of course they support each other, they feed each other, but they might also challenge each other. As they sit kind of sort of in a row, it's also interesting to see what kind of is happening below and above a chakra that you might want to be focusing on and how they're all interrelated. And you really get to observe that in behavioral patterns as well as physical patterns on how things are related in the body as well. And it's so fascinating on how the chakras might actually offer a really tangible explanation for that too, on an energetic level. And so, yeah, that's like in a way the focus, since overall our intention is to free up any stagnation and blockages and turn that into a free flow and movement, because movement is life. I think it's really interesting to look at those main centers where we might be stuck, where we might be really stagnated or deflated or completely overcharged or underdeveloped or stuck in some way. I hope that was helpful. If you have any questions specifically, so it kind of just occurred to me that maybe people have sort of heard of the chakras, but if maybe your background isn't the yoga world, because that is, comes from the yoga philosophy, then maybe the chakras don't really mean so much to you. So please, please, please do come and ask and say, well, what is all that about? I will try to explain that more and better. This course is coming up. It's kind of like my favorite course at the moment. And I said this before in a newsletter, and I thought, maybe I shouldn't have a favorite course, really. But I kind of do, because we dive, not so much about it's not so much about the chakras, but which do fascinate me, but it's really because we're diving so much more deeper into the potency and the potential of the healing power of our touch, and we're diving into this really quite profound healing level in this course, and it's amazing, and it's always so amazing to observe the huge shift that happens for everyone in this course. And so that's happening quite soon here in Portugal, 18th to the 24th of October, which is in a week and a half or so. It's at the beautiful, beautiful Casa do Limoeiro, which is only 50 minutes outside of Lisbon, in beautiful countryside of rolling vineyards. So beautiful, stunning, soft, lovely, kind landscape, and calm and quiet. And after all of the turmoil of this last year and a half or so, is just such a beautiful escape as well. Quite a few people are asking me, whether maybe I might just do this course in Lisbon, in a city, instead of in this kind of retreat format. But, I think I notice such a difference in the level of focus and kind of how deep people dive when I run a course here versus a course out in the country, where people can really have the space to let go, dive in, explore, feel safe, and not be distracted by day-to-day life and the rushing around and everything else that awaits them at home and the noise of the city. And it's so good to have that connection with nature. And you know what, like us therapists and teachers, we need this. We also need to take this time out and rejuvenate and fill up our tanks, because we give and give and give. So I'm actually a really strong believer that we need to also do this for ourselves, to become better therapists, and to sort of just do a quick training in the city. I'm not saying that can't also be good, but it just doesn't go as deep and as profound. And I feel like, I don't know, somehow it's almost our responsibility as a therapist. I don't know, but we need to do that. It makes us better therapists, to take that time out in a way. So 18th to 24th of October, I will post the link below. There's still a couple of spaces left. It will be a small group, an intimate group, safe space, and it will be lovely to maybe see one or two of you join us. That's it. Relatively quick. I think I managed. I don't know how long that was. Thank you so much for listening, and please post your questions or observations, experiences, as always, below the video. Thank you so much. Take care of yourselves. Bye.